The average mortgage from application to completion in Jamaica should take about 90 days.
So it's very important to have the money in order, TRN, a good lawyer, and you have to make sure it's a good lawyer.
When it comes down to the valuation and the survey report, as I said, they're absolutely important. You have to do them if you're doing a mortgage. But even if you're doing cash, I still recommend persons to do a survey.
In America, we do home inspections, which isn't normally done here. But some of my clients, what I do is they hire a contractor and they'll come in and assess.
Destination Jamaica is a big brand.
So an Airbnb is still viable. However, there are pressures, increasing pressures. It's coming from the government, it's coming from social groups like the Strata, the HOA that are being affected adversely in some instances by unruly Airbnb. The first thing you have to do is ensure that wherever you're investing your dollar with the hope of making some income, ensure that you do your due diligence. Try to find a reliable realtor that you verify that this realtor is licensed and has all the qualifications and requirements necessary to practice real estate in Jamaica.
We're going to get into our first panel of the day, and we're going to be looking at purchasing real estate. Everybody here purchased one property in their life? All right, so we're a little bit ahead of, starting from ground zero, but we're still going to break it down in terms of some new considerations, other considerations and new things that are in that sector and in that market. I would like to welcome my first speaker. You're going to come on this side and enter the stage from my right, which is your left. So we're going to welcome Noel Phillips. He is from the Valerie Levy and Associates team. Come on, Noel. I'm also going to welcome Maura Watson. She is a realtor at the DC Tavares and Vincent Limited. So, side. Yeah. And we are expecting one other guest. There are some delays on the road expected. So when he comes, I will do a proper introduction for him. So, Maura, I know this would be your first time, and of course, ladies go before gentlemen. We had Noel with us last year. Now, the first thing is, if I have never bought a property, or maybe I've only done residential, what is the mind frame you want me to be in when I'm thinking about this process? Because it's not a done. When I'm going into this process, where do you want me to start as an individual?
I would like to know if you're a cash buyer or if you have a pre-approved loan.
I'm not sure. Would like her to repeat her response there? Okay, just hold it a little closer to you.
Is that better?
That's better.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask if you're a cash buyer, and cash is always king, or if you're pre-approved by a bank.
Why is cash king?
Because the banks sometimes take a long time. I know NCB's probably in the room, but
truth is truth.
and you have a lot of extra fees. You have to do appraisals, surveys. Mm-hmm. Everything is, it just takes longer. So a cash deal can close quickly.
Okay. Would that be your same thought, Noel?
Absolutely. Guys hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So the mortgages in Jamaica do take a little bit longer than we would hope. A lot of the mortgage banks are now trying to cut that time down as we are now in an obvious real estate boom. The average mortgage from application to completion in Jamaica takes or should take about 90 days. Sometimes it takes way longer than that. And to the disgust of us as realtor, too strong of a word. Because when you're waiting on a mortgage to close, and I don't think it's just mortgage, I think it's the entire process. And a lot of times people get frustrated with that. But cash does allow the process to be sped up, significantly.
All right.
Also on the banks, they don't have a fixed rate. So sometimes your mortgage would be 1,000, but then in a couple of years it would jump to 1,200. So
we're going to get to the rates and how they move and inflation and how it affects it. So we've done in terms of what type of frame of mind we're going to start with. Now let's get into if it's a residential property. What are some of the considerations that we must take into account?
You have to have a TRN number, which is a tax registration number. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. To do any business in Jamaica, even to open up a JPS account, you need a TRN. Mm-hmm. You can be a foreigner to buy. There's no problem. I know some islands you have to live there, but in Jamaica, foreigners are allowed to buy. So it's very important to have the money in order, TRN, a good lawyer, and you have to make sure it's a good lawyer.
So let's talk about what role a lawyer plays in getting this deal along, because you're a realtor. So I have my realtor, well, I need a lawyer. What's the point?
Well, the lawyer makes sure the title is clean, make sure the survey, they recommend you get a survey, the boundaries are okay, and also to make sure you're making the right investment.
The lawyer?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very...
I've had some lawyers ruin deals before, but I mean, we as professionals let them know, but sometimes lawyers can sometimes
be a wealth of knowledge, like a sage.
Yes.
So Noel, she just mentioned the surveyor, and that, the surveyor report is very important as well as the valuation report. Now break that down for me, how that gets done and what role that plays in terms of the property.
Well, the surveyor's report and valuation is necessary, absolutely necessary if you're doing a mortgage. If you're doing a cash purchase, they're not, but they're still recommended, especially the survey. Because what the survey diagram does, or the survey report does, it confirms that the property, one, exists, and two, that the boundaries of the property that you're sold are actual boundaries. I've had cases where persons have bought properties and lived in them for many years or own them for many years, and then when they get to the point that they need to either sell or they want to take out equity out of the property, then they realize that the veranda or the kitchen needs to be torn down because there's a breach of the restrictive covenant. So that's very important. So I do advise persons that even if you are buying a property cash, the valuation confirms or approves the value that whatever the person is asking, that it's within the parameters of what the property actually values. Now, there are cases where persons will still buy a property even though the owner is asking a lot more than what the market value is, for either personal sentimental reasons or because of something that you know or the purchaser knows that maybe the vendor doesn't know. For instance, the build out of the Jamaica road network has contributed to exponential equity in property that in Jamaica over the last couple of years. So for instance, if you bought property, say in Constant Spring, a year before the Constant Spring Road was widened, the corridor, so Constant Spring up to Stony Hill was major traffic problem, so much so that it deterred people from buying there. So you would take, especially on a rainy day, because I live that side, so I can tell you, you would go 1 hour to do 1 mile. So it was terrible. So people just didn't want to buy that area. However, those that knew about the widening of the corridor to a dual carriageway bought up a lot of property before it was broadcast. Because of that, they made a lot of money in a short amount of time. So you do have cases where somebody is willing to buy a little above market because of what they know and what they know is coming. And I think that's real estate all over. So when it comes down to the valuation and the survey report, as I said, they're absolutely important. You have to do them if you're doing a mortgage. But even if you're doing cash, I still recommend persons to do a survey. Very important.
So let's say I see a property and I like it. It's in a ruralish area, but I believe in the potential of building my dream home there. And the title is saying one thing, but when we go and do the site visit, it's a different thing, as you're saying. How do you rectify or remedy that kind of situation?
So again, the title is saying one thing, but?
The title is saying one thing, but when we do the site visit, where the fencing is a different thing from what is on the title.
No, that's tricky because it could be a case where, let's say, for instance, somebody lives here. They inherit this property from their grandfather and grandfather before. And the neighbor had a fence that was an acre into this property. But they know it's their property.
They allow them to be there.
After that fence has been there for a while, the neighbor can claim it legally, undisturbed. So for instance, if you have this property and Mr. Jones is expanding his garden, and he says Mr. Jones, man, is his grandpa's friend, and then Mr. Jones dies, grandpa dies, and now it's inherited by Mr. Jones' son, and Mr. Jones' son might be of a different frame of mind than
his dad.
Exactly. So it's important that if that happens, it could be a case where you lose that acre. So again, with the survey, so you have to, the surveyor would be able to point out that this is where the wall is a breach or the fence, and hence it could be a case where you bought that property thinking, all right, whatever is on the title, that's what I'm getting. But when the sale is closed and the neighbor said, no, this fence has been there for 20 years, I'm claiming this property, you actually get half of what you bought.
So do you take up this kind of query with the local municipality? Which entity?
It's usually the titles office, because when it comes down to boundaries, usually the titles office, I think. But yeah, it's a legal process. And that's why it's important to follow the steps when you're buying property. You know what I mean? It's easy sometimes for us to go, you might meet somebody and they're very charismatic and you go by word of mouth and say, no, man, nobody see that tree up there, so down to the river, it's grandpa property. I'm selling you all of that. And I'm selling you cheap, so just pay me and go on. Do your survey. It's important that you do a survey, because you may find out what you actually bought. And even though it says 10 acres on the title, as I say, if it is that somebody has been undisturbed, has taken in your property in theirs, they can legally claim it. And it's not stealing it. That's just how the Queen left it.
Right. So there are a couple laws that we have to work on there. So Maura, tell me, in terms of like doing a site visit, let's say I'm interested in a property or the land, what are some of the things you would walk your clients through?
Usually when they do the survey, they peg the land. So it's important to find the pegs. But like what Noel said, sometimes there are breaches and people have walls on your property. So a lot of deals I've done, they've had to take down the wall. But if it's over a certain time, then it goes to court. They have squatters' rights. It might be, is it 12 years in Jamaica? It's 12 years. And then the land agency, sometimes they sort these out. Or if it's really a problem, the developer, the owner of that land can cut off that piece to give to that person to solve the problem.
Another consideration you'll see come up in different stories and on social media is trying to understand what type of community it is. How does the rainwater, flow through that area, or even asking questions to the neighbors. When you're doing site visits, do you find that, generally neighbors are willing to give information like that?
Yes, and oftentimes I'll introduce the builder to my client if they're buying land, and the builder always says the land is the boss. You can tell by the way the wind blows, or you can see the moisture on the ground if it needs to be dumped up. So oftentimes I introduce my client to the builder before they're buying. So they understand all the expenses once they buy the land, because oftentimes they do have to dump up land so they don't have flooding issues.
So let's say we're looking at a property and, it has been there for the last 15 to 20 years. Sometimes we're not experts. We don't actually build houses, so we don't know, okay, is that mold or is the roof doing certain funny things? What are some of the things we have to look out for when we're doing the actual site visit?
You can look at the damage in the house. In America, we do home inspections, which isn't normally done here, but some of my clients, what I do is they hire a contractor and they'll come in and assess how old the roof is, what kind of expenses they'll need. They'll look for termites and things like that. So
that's
those are very important.
Thing. Termite, duck ants.
Chichi.
Yes. Tell me some other things I have to look out for.
Yeah, so that's very important. It is so easy sometimes to walk in a property and eyeball it and think, everybody's an expert, right? Once you get the age of the house, I think it is recommended for you to get somebody who is has a little bit more knowledge than you. Because, for instance, you could have a case where the house is really old and somebody is going to sell, so they do a good paint job. So all the cracks are filled out and sanded off and it looks crisp. And then you walk in the space, you buy it, because all you're looking at how good it looks. And then you close on it, and then you close with a lot of issues that may cost you a lot of money to fix, especially older buildings. So I do recommend that. I mean, as Maura was saying, that a home inspection isn't a requirement here, but you do have the persons who are professional builders, persons who do renovation that could accompany. And most of the time, they are going to do it for free. Especially, yeah.
In hopes of getting the work.
Tell me the names of some of these companies or people.
We can do it. But because it's not a standard process here or part of the process, to have somebody come in who, is in the field to say, John, I know you're in construction. I'm looking to buy this house. Come with me and take a look at it. And these are persons who are doing this every day, so they know what to look for and the things that you would overlook. You know what I mean? And especially most of us have persons who are in the built environment that we work with. We have engineers that we work with, and it helps. Like, it's just a part of networking. So for instance, if I'm buying a property or a client of mine is buying a property that they have some queries on, it's easy for me to get an engineer to say, listen, do you have time? Give me 15 minutes, just walk through this with me. Because they know that they could get business out of it. That knowing this person, maybe they want to do some work next year, maybe they want to do some expansion. So it's just a part of the networking. So most of the time we have persons do that. And as I said, because it's not a standard process in Jamaica, most of the time persons will do it without charge.
Okay.
It's not a formal inspection. So it's not like a survey diagram or a valuation report. So you're not getting a diagram. It could be a case where some properties, especially with the banks or with National Housing Trust, once it over a certain age, I think it's 40 years. I think once it's over 40 years, an inspection, an engineer's report is required. So the engineer report checks the structural integrity of the property, because I think normal house building lifespan in Jamaica is about 40 or 50 years, I think. And so therefore, once it's over that, irrespective of whether or not it have cracks or any signs of breach of structural integrity, most banks or most building societies or the trust will require an engineer's report. So that is when you have to get an actual report that we say, you know, the building is sound or the building will need this or that.
There's a particular property on the way to the airport in Kingston. I'm not going to say the name of it. Now, I have a friend who bought into it. She said, so what she told me was, in the lead up to it, they advertised it as great for an investment property, meaning you could use it for Airbnb. But once, you know, a lot of people closed, it changed. And it was, you know, they started talking about there was no Airbnb facility. All the stratas inside were saying, no, they're against Airbnb. So it was like a lot of people became upset. How do you maneuver through situations like that?
That is becoming a big issue now in Jamaica, because Airbnb has the potential of earning a lot of money for a lot of people, and a lot of persons have been buying. And the thing about Airbnb is it's a little bit easier to manage, especially if you're not living in Jamaica. So once you have like a helper or somebody that will clean the property and so on, physically look over the property for you, things like your income goes directly to your bank account. So that part of it is not hard. So because of that, a lot of persons in Jamaica have been buying property, putting them on Airbnb. Also, the fact that Airbnb has much less wear and tear on your property. So you could have a house, an apartment that you put on Airbnb, and what you get in 10 days is more than what you get renting it long-term for a month. You know what I mean? So, as I said, that is becoming an issue. It's important that if you're looking to buy a property and you specifically are looking for something that you want to use for short-term rental like Airbnb, that it is in the sales agreement. That it's not just the realtor saying, you know, I think it'll be good for Airbnb, because you do have cases like that. And we saw a ruling the other day at the Supreme Court where somebody was fighting to say, listen, I want to do Airbnb with my property. The Strata was saying we don't allow it. And the Strata won. That person now is not able to. So what we think going forward is that, like, I think the one that Prune just did in New Kingston last year, or earlier this year.
Via?
Yeah. It was clear in the sales agreement, in their advertisement and everything, short-term rental is allowed. So if somebody buying there and don't want short-term rental, there's nothing they can do to stop you, because that was clear. So I think going forward, what we'll have to do is the developments that will allow short-term rental will have to say it. If it doesn't say it in the agreement, don't leave it up to chance. Don't let the developer say, you know, it's nice for it, it's a good location, I don't say anything, I get a problem with it, so you can buy it. It must be clear, laid out in the sales agreement from the legal perspective, so at least you're covered.
All right. And Maura, I'm going to throw the same question to you in terms of Airbnbs, but before I let you finish, I'd just like to have St. Aubyn Clark. He is from Remax Fleet Realty. He is going to join us. Thank you so much. Yes.
Sorry to be late.
No problem. We understand the road network getting here. So we forgive you. So we're just on the topic of just the Airbnbs and all the changes that are happening and some of the implications. So Maura, would you advise your client in the same way, or what are some of the considerations you have for that?
What I would do is check with the strata of that condo complex and make sure that it is allowable. Like you mentioned, some do not allow short term. So it would be in the strata documents of the property you're buying. So we would find out from the strata and look at their documents and make sure they do allow short term rentals.
Getting permission from the strata. We're seeing a lot of talk, like even especially in New York and overseas, about all these changes to how Airbnbs are run and operated. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's going to impact us in Jamaica?
Yeah, they're talking about it, the Minister of Tourism, and also taxes. So they're trying to, I think a lot of the hotels feel that we're taking a lot of their business. I own a property called Ivy's Cove and I do Airbnb, but we also do booking.com, Expedia. I have my own website. So we always like to get direct bookings so we don't have to pay Airbnb a commission. But Airbnb is changing a lot, it's really, people in Jamaica have made a lot of money with it. So now the government wants to take a piece of that taxation. So that's kind of hard, but we do have, you can write it off.
So if I haven't bought a property like that yet, but I'm still interested because as Noel said, we are experiencing a real estate boom. St. Aubyn, let me throw this one to you. Should I still be looking to do an Airbnb property somewhere in Jamaica? Is it still viable?
Yes, I do think so, because what Airbnb is, it's you creating your space, and you benefit from just the fact that Jamaica is such an awesome destination. Whatever is being put out there in the public space, enticing persons to come to Jamaica, it doesn't tie them into just staying at a hotel, right? Not everybody wants to be locked away when they come to Jamaica. So an Airbnb is still viable. However, there are pressures, increasing pressures. It's coming from the government, it's coming from social groups like the Strata, the HOA, that are being affected adversely in some instances by unruly Airbnb guests. So as Maura just alluded to, the first thing you have to do is ensure that wherever you're investing your dollar with the hope of making some income, ensure that you do your due diligence. Ensure that the strata, the HOA is open to that sort of thing. And ensure that you have controls in place that when your guests come, it's not a free-for-all. Because it's your investment. It's not somebody being selfish and not wanting you to make some money. People have to be very cognizant that this space belongs to multiple owners, and you have to respect another person just as how you want to be respected. So if it's not allowed, don't try to circumvent the situation. But definitely, to answer the question, it's still a good, it's still viable. One of the things that makes it more viable for Airbnb is if you have some cash that you want to do a totally cash transaction, it works out better because now you're not pressured to go outside of the lines to pay your mortgage. If you bought something by cash, and let's say it starts out slowly, because it will. It's something that takes time to build, right? It's your money. It's still right there. The property belongs to you. So that's your money. It's not liquid, but it's your money. So it gives you the time now to do the thing correctly, to ensure that you're marketing your property correctly, to ensure that you have the support in place, that when your guests come, they are comfortable. Anything happens, there's somebody to attend to them. But yes, I do believe that it's still a viable way of making money.
All right.
On the topic of Airbnb, I think Airbnb is an excellent business opportunity. It's a ready-made business, essentially, because it's almost self-managing and it's easy to monitor. And Destination Jamaica is a big brand. You know what I mean? As it regards the government coming in and wanting some tax off. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that's a big deal. And I think we should be willing to pay some taxes because we want the roads to be fixed. We want wherever persons are coming that it is maintained and developed in such a way because that helps your Airbnb. Because you don't want to buy a property and then the roads aren't fixed and people don't like coming there, right? So I don't have a problem with the government coming in. And what I'm hoping is that the Minister of Tourism, who I think has precedence over the decision, will consult with us as realtors. Because persons who are buying a lot of the properties are buying them for Airbnb, and we don't want that because that has contributed to a lot of the growth in our local economy. And Jamaica has been doing really well. We've been having like consecutive growth quarters over the last couple of years. So I think the Airbnb as a business is still viable. What I'm seeing going forward, and I do embrace it, is the fact that I think we should just from the onset determine which complexes will allow Airbnb. So there's no ambiguity about it. So if you're building, and especially if you're building in Negril, it makes no sense to build a complex in Negril, somewhere close to the beach, and you're building 50, 70 units and say no Airbnb. Because most of the persons coming to Negril now are coming for vacation. Even persons who are buying vacation property for themselves. You're not going to be here for the entire year. It'd be good if you could come and live on the beach, right? But most persons have to work. You live in North America. And so...
Or live in Kingston.
Or you live in Kingston like Amma. But say for half of the year, 70% of the time, the property would be empty. It does make sense if you have the opportunity to make some income out of it. And there are persons who are buying specifically for that. And it makes good money. As it regards Airbnb and taking away business from the hotel, I think the Airbnb vacation is totally different. Persons who come to a local and want to use an Airbnb, they want a totally different experience. Mm-hmm. And what Airbnb is going to protect, especially places like Negril, is the ability for a traveler to experience the community, whatever, in a real way. There are persons who
come to... Or a different way.
Non-all-inclusive.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. What's funny
different way
is that you will go to... So in Jamaica, there are a lot of international hotel brands and hotel chains, right? And I find you will go on, and I won't call any name, but you'll go on one of these properties, and you don't know if you're in Jamaica as opposed to Mexico. Because they have designed it in such a way that it's following a master plan that, it was developed wherever their head office is. And there are times when I travel to experience that culture. I want to experience the local food. I want to experience the local people and so on. And I think Airbnb allows that. Mm-hmm. For many years in like Negril. Negril was just small hotels, just like Travelers, that allows you to experience Negril in a real intimate way. As the all-inclusive resorts move in, somebody flying to Jamaica, you land at the airport, a bus picks you up, takes you directly to the hotel. You're there for 5 days, and you don't know where you are. Because your only thing they might say, oh, here's some ackee and sawfish today, and that's it. I said, oh, I was in Jamaica, ate ackee and sawfish. But you've never gone, around to West Side. You didn't go to Rick's Cafe to have a beer. And there's so much more to experience. You know what I mean? So I think Airbnb is here to stay. And I'm hoping that whatever changes that the Minister of Tourism will be introducing to the industry, it won't take away. Because I think if you were to do something that is to drastically reduce the possibility for persons to do the Airbnb, it's not just going to affect the earning potential of somebody who's buying. So you're talking about people who are coming to Jamaica, buying real estate so they can do Airbnb. So we'll lose some of that. Then you're talking about people who are coming to Jamaica to stay at an Airbnb, to experience the local culture and to mingle with the local people. We'll lose that. So the spin-off is drastic. It's drastic. So I'm hoping that the conversation will be, all right, you want some of the taxes? No problem. Because we want you to fix the roads and keep the area really nice so that our clients want to come and want to experience. But I hope it's not drastic enough that it will reduce persons wanting to invest. As it is now, people are coming. And I think a lot of the persons who come for Airbnb don't want to stay in a hotel, don't they? When you come and you spend 5 days, you have your own kitchen and you can go down to the supermarket and buy your own ackee and make your own ackee and sausage. So it's not just to say you ate it, but you made it. The experience is totally different. You know what I mean? So I think as St. Aubyn said, the market will always be there for it. So I'm just hoping that the regulation doesn't do anything that will stifle the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want the Minister of Tourism to come for you because his records are through the roof. But as I say, it's a different
I'd really love to have a conversation with him about it because the funny thing is there is a total different side. Sometimes the persons who make the decision, and this is in any industry, the persons who are way up at corporate, there are things that are on the ground that they don't know about. And sometimes you make decision that the ripple effect of it is so great. So I'm hoping that as these decisions are being made, or they're looking to make this decision, that they will, have a dialogue with us so we can show them a different, vantage point on the topic.
No problem. I just want to ask, can everyone put their phones on silent, please? All the bings and pings and pongs. We're going to be picking it up. And I know all phones on silent for me. It will affect, just the overall flow of everything. All right. The next thing I want to look at is the multi-listing service. Has that been a great help? How do people use it? Is it just for realtors? Tell me, Maura, I'll start with you.
The multi-listing is great. It makes us work together. I've done some deals with St. Aubyn, and I'm hopefully going to do some deals with you, Noel. But what we say in real estate, half a loaf is better than none. So it's good when you have a listing and another agent comes in and brings you a buyer. Mm-hmm. So we work as a team, but the seller always pays the commission. So you can have, you can be representing the buyer and representing the seller, but the seller always pays the commission.
For somebody who doesn't know what it is, tell me about the platform itself and who has access to view the listings.
The whole world has access, so it's great exposure when you're listing a property.
Mm-hmm.
So they can look at it. I think it's realtorsjamaica.com. And then when we go in, we have a listing and we can see certain things that other realtors can see. So it just is a really good platform to advertise a property, to expose it to the whole world. And also we work with other agents and we would split the commission.
If you compare what the prices are now, so the units that were bought for about 230 to 250 are now trending $700 to $1 million. So that's 4 to 5 times. That's 400 to 500%. So that is totally out of what normal real estate appreciation is. And so you can do a valuation to determine what the value is. But on that $1 million US property, you're going to probably pay 3,000 Jamaican per million for a valuation. Mm. And as I said, most of the time, as realtors, we're in the industry, we're doing these transactions daily, or we're seeing other, colleagues doing these transactions. So we usually have a good idea. The other thing is that sometimes the valuation is a little bit behind market. What do I mean by that? Valuation depends on the last property that was sold. And sometimes the last property that was sold 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And especially places like Little Bay Country Club, people hang on to them. And sometimes when they do go to market, they go to market in the complex. A neighbor will sell to another neighbor because somebody came down and said, I really like staying here. Let me know when one goes on the market. So therefore, you know that the demand is really high, even though the last one that was sold 4 years ago. So the valuator will depend on the fact that the last one sold was $400,000. So based on that, I put like $450,000. The realtor knows that the demand is really high. It's just that the inventory is low. So we may know that the demand is such that somebody is willing to pay $600,000. Mm-hmm. So the valuation is sometimes behind market, and there are times where we do persons beat us for things like this, but the market is what decides market price, you know what I mean? So as you determine what price to go to market for, I usually say consult with your realtor, unless it's like a legal case where it's a court order, mm-hmm. where you want to make sure that if there's any backlash or anything, especially in things like a divorce, you have to make sure that you cover all ground. Or the court itself usually require a valuation. But outside of that, you can just consult with your realtor, and we usually have a good idea what the market value is.
All right. At this time, we're going to open up the floor to the Q&A segment for this particular panel on purchasing real estate. If you'd like to ask a question, you can just raise your hand and a mic will be coming to you. So we have, okay. All right, we have a couple in the front rows. Lady in, is this lime green and white? Mm-hmm. Our first question. Right here.
What if you already own a property in Jamaica, but you want an evaluation to see how much it's worth before you list it? What's the process for that?
Own a property, you said?
Like you already own, like my mother owns a property and she wants to know how she can get it evaluated by someone that she can trust.
So what's the process?
So you have valuation companies, persons who are commission valuers. Valuations is one of them. You have, I won't call out all the names of our sponsors, but yeah, there are valuation companies, and it's a simple process, which is that you contact the company, and usually you have to provide a copy of the title, and they will give you an idea of what the cost is. The final cost comes when they have actually visited the property and they kind of see the condition and so on. Usually pay a deposit, like a 50% deposit, or what is estimated to be a 50% deposit. And once they have completed, you pay the balance on pickup of the valuation report.
That's good for you.
So we could give you some companies after, if you, yeah.
And like he said, it's based on the value. They do a percentage of the value. So it's not like just a flat fee. So it depends on the value of the property. That's how they assess the cost.
So even if the property is way up in the bush in the middle of nowhere, okay,
they can value it.
But that's another thing. That's a good point, because they're depending, if the property is somewhere that is really marooned, you're going to get charged for traveling as well.
Mm.
Yeah, and also just to add to that, for anybody doing real estate business in Jamaica, I can't stress this too much. Try to find a realtor first and foremost. Try to find a reliable realtor that you verify that this realtor is licensed and has all the qualifications and requirements necessary to practice real estate in Jamaica. Because even getting a valuer, Google doesn't have all the answers, because Google gives you random stuff. You can be Googling something and it gives you random stuff. You might get a valuer, but that valuer is not recognized by certain financial institutions because they have to be on a panel. So when you talk to a realtor will help you to do the deep diving into ensuring that the resources that you end up choosing are valid and will give you the value that you require. Because, trust me guys, I've heard a lot of horror stories about persons who try to wade into the waters without the right guidance, and they just give up on Jamaica, and we don't want that.
Right. Okay, next question.
So on the topic of Airbnb, right? I mean, we know, I grew up here in Jamaica, lived 20 years ago. So I'm familiar with how things work where it comes to the government properly using our tax dollars, right? So we leave it there. But, on one hand, I hear what you're saying, that if they are going to be using the tax dollars properly, then why not? We want to pay into that. I'm curious, has the government outlined to us a strategic plan of some sort that shows how increasing taxes on properties or applying a tax on Airbnb revenue, how that's going to be utilized? Or are we just kind of hoping that they do the right thing?
You mean how the tax from the Airbnb, what it will go directly to?
Yeah. You're collecting taxes right now. You're saying you want to collect revenue stream.
So I think that's what he's saying. So now they're in discussion. So he's hoping that the minister will actually consult different stakeholders, including realtors, to lobby for how the taxes will be done. But we're not sure.
All right. So realistically, once you're making an income, so Airbnb is a business. Right. And so it's a business income. And rightly you're supposed to be paying tax on business income. So that's just standard. The question of how the tax will be collected and how the tax will be used, I'm not sure, but we have seen some benefit from the Tourism Enhancement Fund, I think it is. So a few years ago, they started to collect, I think, $2 for persons who are coming in on cruise ships and $20 for persons who are flying in. And they created a pool fund. Out of that came things like the Montego Bay Beach Park, which is a real welcome attraction to Montego Bay. It's really nice, a nice place though. I don't know if you've ever been there. And now we are looking at a beach park in Negril, because Negril is, guys, some of the most beautiful beaches in the world are here in Negril, or Ocean View. And so we have seen where that fund has done things that are welcome in the industry. So we're hoping that, I don't know, I'm thinking that the Airbnb tax may go to something like the Tourism Enhancement Fund. I'm not sure yet. As Amashika said, we're currently in the preliminary stages of it. I don't know how far the minister reached as regards structuring how the tax will be collected and what it will be used for. We don't know yet. But as I say, I'm hoping that, because I think if they just decide that they're coming with a 10% tax on your Airbnb income, I would prefer that than they come with regulations that will prevent you from doing Airbnb.
Mm-hmm. But this is why forums like this is important. So we write in the newspaper, we have clips, and we have, members of the media here. So this is how we lobby to say, well, we have some direction as to what you can do with the particular taxes or revenue that you're going to get from it. All right. Next question.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Javon Keys, TVJ News. So I have a follow-up on the Airbnb question. You're right, so far we've not heard anything as it relates to exactly how it will be utilized. We've heard talks of it not necessarily being a tax, but some kind of regime that would be pumped into the economy. But I wanted to ask, what would you like those regulations to look like? Because they are likely to come based on what we've seen overseas, and you've called for consultation. But what are some of the things you would say are critical to be a part of that kind of framework? And that's what I'd love to hear from each of the panelists if possible.
Well, it would be nice if the government would help us, like as they promote hotels. And I have an Airbnb personally, and the Ministry of Tourism does come and they do help. So it looks like they're trying to help us promote our properties as well, because it's another avenue than staying in a hotel. And a lot of my clients are locals too, and a lot of family reunions and weddings. So it's definitely a really good investment. I feel Airbnb is going to continue to grow, and the government's probably just going to come out with a new platform on the taxation. Is what I think they're working on.
All right. Noel?
As it regards what we would like to see the regulations looking like, I would like if so a registration of all Airbnb units would be good, because that it's not just, I think a lot of persons are afraid of that because they think now the tax person is going to be over them with the axe all the time. But I think it also protects guests who are coming. You know what I mean? So if you want to search to say, is this person, because Airbnb as an international group, when you're doing business in every country in the world, I'm sure that Airbnb not sending somebody to Jamaica to say, my house in my back room here or whatever is safe and is okay. And sometimes when it comes on, and especially a country like Jamaica that depends so much on tourism, one bad publication can have the ripple effect that can cause a lot of persons to lose their income or drastically affect the industry. So as regards the regulation, the taxation, I don't have a problem with the government saying they want, standardize it, taxes are paid from the income. Also to have a central registration process where persons who are intending to go into Airbnb business probably register with TPDCO. Once a developer is doing a development, you're building some condos or something like that, that it is clear from the get-go that this property allows for Airbnb, that the government knows, and therefore persons who are going into that business are clear that they're investing. So there's not a case like what happened the other day where somebody will buy a property hoping to do Airbnb. The Strata decides that they don't want it, and now they have to rethink, even though this was the business plan that they had. So I think streamlining some of those things that will protect both the guests and the investor and allow the government to get, some of the taxation, I don't have no problem with that. I think those are some of the things that we're looking at.
Before I let St. Aubyn respond to the question, I'm going to ask, so in terms, you mentioned like the registration of all Airbnb properties. So remember, Airbnb is not owned by a Jamaican. And if our government is going to, come into play, we need some Jamaican to be in that mix. Would you also recommend that they take hold of having that registered entity and manage it? I'm asking.
So that again.
TPD code does that.
Airbnb is not a registered company in Jamaica. It's not based here. So I'm saying, are you also saying maybe the government needs to have an entity that will manage all of these short-term?
Oh, so we already have an entity. So once you're in hospitality, once you're in tourism and anything like you're setting up like a hotel or any room that you're renting out to persons, specifically for persons who are coming in as tourists or as visitors, you're supposed to be registered with TPD code. So I think what we may find is that body might expand or create an arm specifically for Airbnb.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So St. Aubyn, you'd like to respond?
Yes, certainly. So one of the things that a clarification that we need to make first and foremost, just so that there's no ambiguity, Airbnb is a brand name.
Mm-hmm.
So when we say Airbnb, a lot of persons are talking about all the transient stay platforms that deal with short-term stays in Jamaica. So when we say Airbnb, is that what we're talking about?
Short-term.
Great,
Short
great.
stay.
So for me, I'm not sure exactly what that sort of framework would look like, but I tend to agree with what Noel just put forward, because as realtors in Jamaica, we tend to be sometimes mistakenly seen as persons who are big players in the Airbnb game, and we are not. As realtors, we are not. However, perception is very important. So if persons from outside of Jamaica looks at a realtor as the overarching authority on anything that has to do with where they stay in Jamaica, whether it's short-term or long-term, we have to be concerned as to how it impacts on our industry. So for regulation, we don't want to over-regulate because we know the government is very good at that. But of course, we would want to see a framework that is clearly identifiable to say this is who are involved. Right now, I think it's kind of an informal. It's very informal that all transient stay up platforms in Jamaica, and a lot of things can slip through the crack. As I said, I am not sure exactly what it would take because it takes some legal minds and all of that. But definitely, we would want to see regulations in place that protects the industry, protects the owners, and protects the persons who are staying in those properties.
All right. Another question?
Good morning. My question refers to building materials.
Building materials.
Yes. I lived in Arizona for a long time. I currently live in Las Vegas. And they use wood. Yeah, unless you custom build, but I don't like wood. So I'm asking, what materials do you use here in Jamaica mostly?
It's mainly concrete and steel because hurricane proof. So most of our construction is block and steel, and it's about $100 US a square foot. Some go up higher than that, but most of my clients, that's what my builder charges.
The following panel will be very interesting for you as well, because we're going to be navigating the whole construction industry. All right, but that response was sufficient for now. All right, two more. Ready?
Yeah, Airbnb is supposed to be like if you have whatever the facility is, maybe a tent. If the person wants it, then they'll pay for it. So if you regulate it, then you take out the whole idea of Airbnb. Back in the days, Airbnb, if you have a tent, as long as you state that it's what it is, and the person will pay for it, that's what they want. Some ecotourists want something up in the hills, in the Rastaman tent or wherever, and that's what you want. So if you regulate Airbnb in the way people want, then it become like this formal business and it's streamlined. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe the newsman can talk about that.
So you're saying you're not necessarily for the super regulation. You kind of want it to stay.
Airbnb is supposed to be, or it was supposed to be for whoever you pay for what you get. You don't have to get air condition or anything like that.
But you're saying as long as it lists exactly what is. But that's why things fall to
I don't think regulation necessarily means to a stranglehold. You know what I mean? It could be a case where we have everybody who is an Airbnb owner is registered. So for instance, if you decide that you come into Jamaica and you want to experience a tent in the hills of Portland, that the person who is setting up that tent has been registered with the government and we know who you're going to. So if something happens and you go missing in the hills of Portland, we know that you went up to Portland to stay in Mr. Brown's tent. So so I know regulation is usually sometimes, seems like a bad word, but it's not necessary. And that's why I'm saying I'm hoping that there's a lot of consultation with the ministers and the ministries that want to regulate, because we're not against regulation. Because regulation sometimes protect the persons who are coming, and they protect the persons who own, and they protect the persons who are building. So regulation sometimes can take the form of come together, tell me what's going on in the industry. What do you think? For instance, Jamaica, as I say, the real estate industry has been growing so fast. And it's been employing so many persons. And I'm sure that the government that is benefiting. So for the last year, we had 2 credit companies upgrade. Like, that's good. And a lot of that growth came from, one, as Senator Aubyn spoke earlier about Proceeds of Crime Act and stuff like that Jamaica is holding tight to and regulating the real estate industry. And it came from the growth in the real estate industry as well. So I don't think regulation necessarily need to take the form of strangling the industry to death. It could just be, all right, how can I protect it? How can I fertilize it and make sure that it grows in a way that it does not grow and then mushroom and then some terrible happens and then everything collapses. And so we don't want that. I still believe that Jamaican real estate industry is still in its baby stage. As regards real estate consumption, I know our time is winding down, but I just want to say this. As regards real estate consumption, Jamaica's real estate consumption is still mostly Jamaican. A good 70% of new real estate that is constructed every year is consumed by Jamaican. There is still a big chunk of the industry that has a lot of growth potential. When you compare the entire regions, like the region is growing, right? And when you compare Jamaica to like the Bahamian real estate market, where I guess 70 or 80% of that market is from persons from the United States and Europe who are coming into Bahamas and buying. Jamaica is like about at 25%. And most of that 25% is diaspora. It's Jamaicans who live abroad who are coming back home to buy sometimes their first property. So as the market still has a lot of growth potential, so therefore we want to make sure it's regulated in not a way that will prevent the growth or stifle the growth, but it's regulated in a way that will protect the industry and will continue to see it growing and employing the person and creating wealth.
And the final question for this panel. Okay.
Awesome. Not to beat a dead horse, but I just want to know what can we do as a group of interested individuals, and what can we do to actually lobby for some of the things that we want to see? How can we shape what the government does? How can we influence what they do? Because I don't think any of us are convinced that we should just wait and see what they come up with.
That's a very good point. The diaspora of Jamaican diaspora is a very powerful group. And over the last couple of years, I've even heard of the discussion of expanding voting for the Prime Minister and members of Parliament to be expanded to persons who are in the diaspora. And I think that's a good idea, because diaspora has propped up and has contributed to the growth of our country and the sustainability of especially the real estate industry for many years. And because the diaspora contributes so much, when the diaspora speaks, persons listen. And so maybe as regards this topic of Airbnb, a group can be formed, we as realtors, we're trying to get our voices in, but I know there are different diaspora bodies. And so, reach out to the minister, make a statement, call the gleaner, let your voice be heard. Let it be heard that you're concerned, because you want as many voices as possible to enter the conversation. And because sometimes when persons are quiet, it might seem like you agree. You know what I mean?
And this government particularly likes to look at their responses on Twitter and all of these platforms. So tweet and tag the ministers and the prime minister. All right. And I believe that is the last question on this panel. And at this time, we're going to say thank you to Maura Watson, Noel Phillips, and St. Aubyn Clark for our panel on purchasing real estate. Let them all feel welcome. Well,
Thank you.